Welcome to the pharmaphorum podcast. This is web editor Nicole Raleigh, and today I have with me Dr Jörg Schüttrumpf, MD, PhD, who is the Chief Scientific and Innovation Officer of Grifols and Chief Executive Officer at Biotest, part of the Grifols Group. Welcome, Jörg.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. Thank you for having me here in the podcast, and it's a pleasure that we can talk today.
So today we'll be discussing advancing immunoglobulin or Ig treatment for immune disorders, looking broadly at the field and current innovation that is working towards redefining how these therapies are delivered, accessed and optimized for a growing and diverse patient population. Before we sink our teeth into our central topic though, Jörg, I was wondering if you could share with listeners a little about yourself, about your journey to doing what you do today with Grifols.
Yeah, will be a pleasure. So just to give you some background, I'm a physician scientist by training, and I began my career in the field of gene therapy. And later on, I trained also as a physician in transfusion medicine and in immune hematology. And at this time, I started working for the German Red Cross. And there I began basically my contact also with blood products. And through this, ultimately also came, of course, to plasma products in all the field of immunology and hematology. And this was also the time when I then joined Biotest and later on also Grifols. And it's really the idea to develop effective new therapeutics. This was always kind of the motivation in my career for blood diseases and also immune diseases. And there it's where I basically also see the tremendous opportunity still to move the field forward, and where really it's on one hand a very special business because you produce new medicines out of human blood plasma, but then combining this with modern technology, with technology in the biomedical space, but also, of course, with new information technology, digitalization. There's so much that can be done, and I also still see such a big medical need for many patients. So this is basically my motivation, how I came in this field, and also how I go on as a physician scientist in this field.
Thank you, Jörg. So thinking about plasma and thinking about moving the field forward, let's shift over to our main topic today. There is an increasing prevalence of immunodeficiency and autoimmune disorders, and that has led to an increasing demand for plasma-derived immunoglobulin therapies and a need for scalable and sustainable treatment solutions. So, Jörg, I was wondering if you could set the scene for us and perhaps provide an overview of the current treatment landscape in this field before we talk about those shifts into the future.
Yeah, and you actually mentioned this quite well. It's a field, immunoglobulin therapies, that is growing, and it's still growing rapidly on many fronts. On one front, there are the different indications like immune deficiencies, where still most of the patients actually are not diagnosed. Then there's the field of secondary immune deficiencies, where we see that with new treatment that come up, for example, CAR T-cell therapies or other immune therapies, patients actually get immune deficient over long term and long time, and they need immunoglobulin replacement as a therapy. And then you also have autoimmune diseases where there are many, many uses of immunoglobulins to treat autoimmune diseases. And also there is a high need. And with advancing trials in this area, we see an expansion in new areas of immunoglobulin. So the field is also growing there. And then we have not only these kind of indications that are growing, but I mentioned already that some of the patients we actually are highly underdiagnosed. So with medical progress and diagnosing patients. This is a big topic. And then we have the topic that in many areas, in many regions of the world, there is really the access growing to this medicine. So systems are developing. So areas and countries where before we didn't have access to plasma-derived therapies, this access is coming. And this is also a big part of what is happening in the field. So it is really that it's growing, let's say, globally. The plasma-derived therapies and immunoglobulin therapies, and this is also kind of the challenge to say, okay, how do we grow with this and really also grow the infrastructure that can support all the treatments necessary and needed for the patients that have these diseases.
Thank you. So if we hook onto that notion of growth now and access and meeting patient needs, how does industry, including Grifols, work to ensure a stable supply of therapies while also driving innovation in both treatment delivery and new developments to, as I say, meet the patient needs?
Perhaps just to give you an idea, Grifols is a leader in the plasma industry, and Grifols continuously invest in plasma centers. So Grifols operates more than 400 plasma centers, and you can imagine that this is one important part to grow really the collection and how we get the human plasma. And this also needs the commitment of many donors who want to donate on a regular base to support this patient. So this is one big part of what is Grifols doing. And then the other part is the manufacturing of this plasma. And manufacturing means that from this plasma, we basically extract the different proteins that are then therapeutics. So Grifols is also heavily investing in this. We are currently starting a new manufacturing plant in Spain. We also have two manufacturing plants in the US, in Clayton in North Carolina, and in Los Angeles in California. And both of them are operating already for a few decades now. And so we are also constantly investing in these plants. And then there is another part. We mentioned that the access is growing worldwide, and Grifols also is leading in this field to really try to help countries to build up the infrastructure for plasma collection and then also for manufacturing. And I think a great example is Grifols Egypt, which Grifols for Egypt, Grifols Egypt for plasma derivatives is basically was set up as a new kind of venture where Grifols supports Egypt by developing their own infrastructure. And I think that's really a great example of how to give access to plasma-derived medicines in countries where this kind of infrastructure was not available until now. And let's say a little bit different but similar approach we, for example, also support in Canada, where Grifols is working with the Canadian Blood Services to implement also and build Grifols builds a plant there and also collects locally and establishes a plasma collection infrastructure in Canada. So this is really the challenge, and this is also the goal of Grifols to broaden this access to plasma-derived medicines and enabling patients to get access to these medicines worldwide.
Thank you. Yes, it all comes down to the patients. So I was wondering if we could also now discuss administration flexibility, immunoglobulin administration flexibility with subcutaneous solutions that provide patients with greater flexibility.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. This is actually also a very important area in which Grifols is advancing. So to give you a background, traditionally immunoglobulin therapies were given intravenously. And of course, this in a world where most of the patients really want to live a normal life and be more self-determined is kind of difficult, because you have to go to regular checkups, you have to get to the doctor's office to get your regular infusion. And there, subcutaneous therapies are actually a great advance, because they give this kind of independence that you can even treat yourself at home, and you have easier access to the medicines. So this is something where Grifols also embarked in, and Grifols also has developed a subcutaneous immunoglobulin. It's called Xembify, and it's not only the development and bringing it to the market, but it's a continuous effort, for example, to expand indications, to expand access, and also with new licenses, for example, bringing the product to more and more countries and making it available basically wherever patients are. And this is part of the effort in the subcutaneous immunoglobulin space.
Thank you, Jörg. So, staying with the notion of innovation, where do you see the main focus of innovation in the immunoglobulin spectrum?
To say immunoglobulins are kind of established therapy now for decades. And we at Grifols look at it that actually the immunoglobulins that we provide at the moment only cover one part of it, because they are all immunoglobulins on the market are IgG-based immunoglobulins. But the human body, and we all have also other immunoglobulins like IgA and IgM. And we really think that they play a key role in many diseases, and also in the protection of the patients, because these IgA and IgM are actually the kind of first line of defense. These are more natural immunoglobulins, for example, for bacterial infections, or IgM is, for example, on many of the surfaces, like in the nose or in intestines, and play a role there. So we are actually the only group and company which has really advanced projects in this field. And we are targeting at the moment more the space of severe infections. And here, really a great example is a phase 3 clinical trial, which we are performing at the moment in a severe community-acquired pneumonia, where we saw in the phase 2 that actually patients could benefit, and we could really redirect this kind or many of the patients which normally would die with a very high mortality from these severe infections, so that they can recover from this disease. And so we see this as a tremendous opportunity where we can make a difference. And I mentioned SCAP as a severe infection, but of course, this is only one example. There are many other serious infections, for example, peritonitis or urinary tract infection or other respiratory infections. So we see a really huge medical need there, that this kind of immunoglobulin is one aspect, and the other aspect we are looking at and where we think that there's a lot of potential is basically making the treatments even more effective. And so what we are looking there is making it more effective, is having really against specific antigens or bacteria or viruses, very specific and highly functional polyclonal antibody therapeutics, either from plasma or recombinantly produced, which could really cover and make a difference in this kind of diseases. So these are basically the two aspects where we see this difference, and these are also the two aspects where we are working on new technologies.
And can you tell us perhaps more about these recombinant polyclonal therapeutics, Jörg?
Oh, certainly. So Grifols has a really unique platform here, the GigaGen platform. And what it makes so different and also promising is that, of course, with immunoglobulins, we normally capture, let's say, the whole immune system of many people by collecting their antibodies. But what GigaGen does is it can collect the actual cells in the blood that produce these antibodies and get the genetic information out of there, and then recreate this kind of genetic information for this whole diversity of immunoglobulins, basically in a petri dish or in an artificial expression system. And this allows us to produce recombinant polyclonal antibodies and develop preparations which can then be really tailored to specific needs for specific diseases, or with very high acting and concentrated antibodies in a reliable way. And this we see that this technology in the future can really be a game changer for immunoglobulin therapies and how we think about them and how we can develop them.
Thank you, Jörg. I want to turn now to the integration of real-world evidence, or RWE, and artificial intelligence, or AI, as everyone has come to know it, in shaping the future of immunodeficiency care. From optimizing plasma donation processes to identifying new treatment indications, as you've been discussing, Jörg, what can you tell us about how these tools enable a more data-driven approach to both patient care and drug development?
So let's start at the beginning, really with the patient who has a problem. And what I mentioned at the beginning is that what we very often have is that it takes in some diseases like primary immune deficiencies or also CIDP often years, many years, 10 years or longer, until these diseases get the right diagnosis. And we believe that here, really, this kind of real world evidence, getting all the data from the patients immediately for diagnosing these patients and just, for example, suggesting the right measurements would make a tremendous effort. And this is also one part where we are working on to really help to establish this kind of diagnostic features that can be used in the daily patient care, and which will help the patients to get really fast access to these diseases. This is one part. The other part, and now I'm talking more from a pharmaceutical company developing new therapeutics, it's that AI has a tremendous potential to accelerate the development of new therapeutics. This is on one hand, if we look into, for example, the antibodies or the therapeutics we are developing to find the right diseases, find the right centers to accelerate clinical trials, is using AI to help us, especially in very structured reports and analyzing data and putting this together for regulatory submission. And we see that often the development timelines in the pharmaceutical industry are very long, with more than 10 years, that we can actually reduce this by years using these new technologies. And so it's really a big point where we can use this and where real world evidence and data can make a big difference.
Thank you, Jörg. And I have a final question for you today. What of the horizon of IG in 5 to 10 years? What is your crystal ball telling you?
Yeah, and of course, crystal ball is always difficult. I first would say I still see that the need for immunoglobulin therapies will substantially grow in the next 5 to 10 years. So it's still something where it's really important to invest in both the infrastructure from manufacturing for plasma collection and also in new technologies. And then I, of course, see the topic that also the treatment landscape is changing. I think more and more immune deficiencies will gain importance for immunoglobulin therapies because technologies also in other fields are developing. So this is something that is really predicted and coming, and will help at some points to close this gap that we have with immunoglobulin therapies, to bring them forward. And then I would think also, when I think of the patients, that one so important point is the convenience. So I think, although we are working on the convenience, for example, with the subcutaneous application forms, we will even get better on this, and treatments will get more convenience. On one hand, it could be, for example, that the way of injections and how we can provide the different drugs will be easier. It's also something, for example, we are working on a very highly potent recombinant polyclonal antibody preparations, and these will allow, for example, to administer for some patients which have a high need, much smaller volumes, or giving drug really in very long intervals. So patient convenience I see as a big topic. And this is really the point where I see that also for some pathogens and in some situations, this kind of recombinant technology could at some point also not really replace the plasma-derived therapies, but I think they will work together and complement each other, and therefore will help to improve also the patient care and also the level of protection that immunoglobulin therapies give to many patients. And perhaps as a short closing statement, that Grifols is really here positioned across the whole value chain, meaning starting from R&D and innovation to move forward new therapies and address the patient needs, but also through all the supply of these therapies, from early donation to drive really, and that we can meet the demand, to the manufacturing, so that the idea is to drive progress really in the field and meet also this future demand.
Thank you, Jörg. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Nicole. It was a great pleasure. And thank you for the interview.
And that concludes another episode of the pharmaphorum podcast. You can find more information about this episode, including a download link and information about previous installments, at pharmaphorum.com/podcasts. The pharmaphorum podcast is also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, Pocket Casts, Podbean, and pretty much wherever else you download your other podcasts from. Just search for pharmaphorum and follow and hit subscribe. Of course, don't forget to visit our website itself, where you can sign up for daily and weekly news and analysis bulletins. And do follow us on Blue Sky and LinkedIn at pharmaphorum. That's all for now. Thank you for listening.